these old Internationals, they're actually not a bad looking truck. So I got this thing in here. It's sitting on a about a 93 Dodge, first gen dually two-wheel drive chassis. So far, I've got all the springs ripped out of it. I'm going to put ladder bars in this thing with a panhard bar in the rear, and I'm gonna airbag it so this truck sits on the ground. At this point right now, what I have here is this is gonna be the ladder bar for the rear. This right here welds onto the rear axle. So we've got rid of all the U-bolts and all the spring perches and everything off the rear end. We cleaned it all up and then cleaned the frame off really good. This is gonna weld on there. This is some 1.75" DOM. It's a 120 wall, so it's plenty thick. It's heavy duty for a 1-ton truck. We're gonna haul a lot of weight with it. This is great. It's gonna work out good. But this will give us the ability to slam the truck all the way down on the ground. The springs won't let us do that. This will actually give us the moving. All these move. All this moves. There's gonna be a heim right here. This one I need to cut down. It's almost there, but this needs to be cut down. We need to cut it down so it'll fit right in here. And then I'll TIG weld it all up. This will be complete. I've got one over here kind of ready. This one here is one that's somewhat ready. And put this in there, so that way you can be adjustable. This one still needs to be welded up, but basically this is how it's gonna kind of look, like this right here. It'll weld on the rear end and come right up to there like this. Then it'll slam down and it'll move. But that's replacing basically the leaf spring in a way. Your spring actually acts as kind of like, you know, keeps your axle from moving around. That's what this is gonna do. And then we're gonna run a panhard bar in the back to keep the rear end from moving like this. The ladder bars are all welded together right now. All our heim joint right here where it's all connected to the frame is not welded in. This is all just tacked up right now. But this is gonna give us an idea of how far we can slam this truck on the ground. We just unbolted and took the bump stops out of it. So this thing ought to literally lay on the rear axle. The frame should hit the rear axle, and that's what I want. We're probably gonna put a bump stop in, but if we do, it'll be a little one, or the bags will actually stop it from hitting the frame. But what we're trying to do is, remember, I want to try to get these right here on the ground. So these should hopefully be down here by the time we get done lowering this right now. So here's the moment of truth. Yesterday when we tacked this thing up, we were just trying to get it into position and find out our measurements. And when I crawled under here and I started tacking on it, I noticed that underneath, I didn't see, but there's a lot of rust right here. So this is where the spring perches used to sit for the springs. And underneath them's a big pile of rusty junk. And when I tried to weld it, it didn't like it. So we're gonna cut it all back off, and I'm gonna clean this rear end up anyway. And then I'm gonna grind this down to weld these on correctly, because this is where all your torque is transferred from. When you start to push on the throttle, that pinion wants to drive itself into the ground. And so there's a lot of torque on this right here. And you know, if you're loaded up with a car on the back of this thing, going down the road and you stand on the throttle, you know, if this is a weak point, it could tear the weld all the way around. So I'm gonna cut this all out and start over, because I don't want it to be catastrophic later. So whenever you're welding anything that you're welding on your vehicle, make sure the material is clean and you're getting proper penetration, because that absolutely is not, and it's not acceptable. A lot of guys will leave that and go with it and just start welding, but this is all dirty. Let's clean this up and start over and get it fresh, and you'll see when we get done how much better it'll be to weld to as a clean, prepped surface. we got to go back through, clean all these up. I'll grind this all off, clean it back up. All this will get grinded off and cleaned up. And we'll be able to actually get in there and get a good weld on it. It's not a bad idea too sometimes to go in here with your flap disc and bevel that just a little bit so you get a little bit better weld. So we'll probably bevel them while we got them out and make it right. This is the process we're at right now. We've crawled underneath here and dropped out the old suspension under here. These are the old coilover springs that were in it. These are actually, the shock actually ran up through the middle right here. So this is where the shock would come up through right here. And you put the knot on here and it's bushinged right here. The bottom of your shock bolts in these two bolts down here on the bottom of this lower control arm. There's been a little bit of whacking away here to get this to fit right. So this has all got to be custom cut out right here. We're clearancing different things and getting them out of the way that we don't really need. That was, you know, obviously for a different application, because what we're doing now is we're putting an airbag in here, which is going to change a lot of things. That being said, we've got some plates here that are cut out. And I'll show you on the other side. The other side is pretty much complete at this point. This plate right here is going to go down here in the bottom, right here. It'll get welded in. There'll be some holes punched in it, and those will actually bolt right into here. We're probably just going to put one bolt into it right here in the center. And it's a 3/8 inch bolt, goes right into here, and we'll tighten it up. You can still access it through the shock hole down here. This is your plate that we're going to put on here, okay? And it sits on here, and then we're going to weld it all in right here. On the upper part, we have this plate that's going to go right up in here like this, and we're still grinding and cleaning to make it fit right. And the way that we have to do that basically is, you can see this chalk line right here. This has to be cut right here, and this has to be cut right here. And then we're gonna just heat this and bend this back. We're gonna clean this up and we'll weld this up into here so structurally it'll stay strong. And this plate's gonna fit up in here like that. And then what happens is once we get that in there, then we're gonna put these airbags in, and they sit basically right in here like this. And then once we get the plate in there, you know, we'll put it all back up and put the upper control arm back in, which is laying down there, and put it all back together. Okay, so we put all new bushings in the front of this, new ball joints in it, and then we've got the bags in it right now, which you can kind of see how that's going to work. So what was here was that your coil spring was sitting right here with your shock going through the middle. Now what we have is we have the airbag here, and we're going to remote mount the shock probably back here now. We're going to build brackets and put the shock back here so we still have the shock. But that's where the airbags are going to be sitting. You can see the plate. You can't even tell actually if you look down in here. It's all welded in. You don't even know that it was really modified for an airbag. But this truck should ride really good with the double bellow big bag that we have. We don't have to put a ton of air pressure in it to get ride height. We got it where it's perfect. So when it's riding down the road, it's got the right amount of air pressure in it, and it floats down the road good. That's what we want. We're gonna go ahead and start putting this other side in and hopefully get the wheels on this thing. We do have a problem with our studs. These are a little bit bigger. These are 5/8. We need 9/16. So we'll knock these out, put some smaller ones in so our lug nuts will work with our wheels. Hopefully we'll see this thing on the ground by the end of the day. I don't know. We're gonna try it out. Okay guys, I've got this truck on the ground finally. It's been a lot of work, but we got it where we want it. It looks good. I think I'm gonna extend this bumper a little bit. Actually, these bumpers were designed to be down below anyway, but somebody cut it out and raised it. I think I'm gonna get the bumper back down on the ground so the front bumper lays on the ground. That'll be next. So the L Series 150 was a cool little truck. It was after the war. They started building these trucks after the KB series. But International actually made some good vehicles. This one here actually has no rust, no dents. It's in really good shape. This is the 49 to 52 year split back window, which is kind of cool. With a little Cummins diesel in it, I mean, it just puts it all together and it makes it right. So what we've done here is built a ladder bar rear suspension for this thing. And the bags that we put on here will travel about 9 inches. At ride height, this thing is gonna ride really good. It's got good travel, good ride height. We get a big heavy panhard bar in here. So that way when I throw a bunch of weight on the back of this truck, all of this is gonna hold together. You can see our bars are big and our big heims in it. So it'll take the torque, it'll take the abuse that it will. If you put a toolbox bed on this thing, it'll be able to take about a bunch of that. And these 20-inch wheels, they look pretty good. I'm on the fence of, I don't know, once I get the bed on it, they might get powder coated white, like an eggshell white, and then I'll patina them and make them look a little older. And then go through this cab and maybe buff it out. And depending on what the bed looks like, I gotta work around the bed. That's the next thing. Here's all our switches for our air ride. Everything's back here, the tank, the compressor, the battery. This is all just temporary right now because all of this I'm gonna run in the bed because I don't have enough room up here. And that's kind of what sucks about these older trucks is you run out of real estate for batteries and radiator. Luckily, I could fit a first gen radiator in this one and the first gen fan. So this thing ought to run and operate just like it did from the factory. The intercooler fits up there, but I'm gonna have problems back here with batteries. So those will go in the toolbox, which will be fine. It'll all be hidden and it'll look good. So, you know, these old 12 valves, I mean, I love them. I love the little individual valve covers on them. They have a cover for them, but I like these. And this is kind of, I started doing this years ago. Powder coat the valve covers and kind of give them a little bit of look and make the motor pop a little bit. It looks really kind of cool. The turbo, I'm waiting on Industrial's turbo. I'll probably still use this housing. If I can't, I'll just repowder coat the one they gave me and do it again. But it just kind of pops it out, gives it a look. And you know, this motor really, I mean, they're like 160 horsepower. By the time I'm done with it, it might make 220 horse, which is plenty for what I'm doing and plenty for that automatic transmission. So I don't want to go too crazy with it, but it just kind of dresses it up and makes it look good. I think my next thing is to put a utility bed on it with toolboxes so I can put a welder in it, get it on the ground, and you know, get the toolboxes where they kind of lay on the ground with the truck. This truck with this little motor should get 20, 21 miles a gallon. It does have an automatic in it. So it should do pretty good on mileage. It'll be a nice little cruiser, a cool little work truck. Pretty thrilled about getting this thing done and getting the bed on it. But right now, I am going to finish the floor pan in it and button up some things underneath it. Industrial Injection is sending out a fuel pin, some injectors, a turbo, and a few things to put a little bit more horsepower in the motor, which will be perfect for what I'm doing. It's not over the top. What I'm trying to do here is just add a little timing, get a little bit of fuel in it, and make it run a little bit better. The great thing about it is it's a 12 valve. You can run it on lots of different kind of alternative fuels. So that's what makes this thing so valuable to me. But yeah, it's looking good, and hopefully in the next little video, I will be out in the yard trying to find this utility bed. I think I got one located. I haven't seen it. I've just asked about it. So maybe tomorrow or the next day I'm gonna go take a look at it, and then within the next week dig it out. So hopefully that'll be the next thing, but hope you've enjoyed so far what we've done to this truck. We've taken it from like, I thought was kind of an ugly duckling to something that I think is turning out to be so cool looking. And you know, just don't ever pass up those ugly ones, because those ugly ones, no one wants them, but you can still make them cool, and ugly is the new cool.